not listening to like any of them. I feel like I sound
terrible. You have to. You don't though. And like, I have to listen to it over and over and over again. You need to listen to it once.
I listened to the clip you sent me.
Okay. Well, that's good enough.
I'm listening to it now.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Welcome to The Day After, a podcast dedicated to sharing stories and navigating grief together.
All right, Carl. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for coming on. We are very grateful. We are very appreciative. And I guess let's start with you. You're Carl, and maybe like what happened? Who did you lose? The beginning of your story.
Okay. Yeah, so I was not even 2 years old. And at that age, of course, there's not much that you remember. There's just certain feelings that I remember. My dad, I believe he was 26 when he was diagnosed, so very young. And going back to, this was 88 when he passed. It was 86, I believe, when he was diagnosed. So right after my parents were notified that my mom was pregnant. And interestingly enough, this is one thing that my mom says to me to this day, but she says that, I was the gift that they needed to stay strong through the whole process after he got diagnosed, as they traveled all over the country seeking treatments, which obviously failed. But I was just under 2 when he passed, and it certainly changed my life forever. What do I remember from then? It's really hard to answer. I remember everyone around me just feeling such sadness, like a depth of sadness.
For you?
For him.
Yeah.
I think at the time, yes, there was some concern about me, of course, but it was amazing to see how my family rallied around him.
Yeah.
And I know this not from my own experience or my own memories. It's the stories that are told and the experiences that I've had later in my life, and how, to be honest with you, his life and his death made such a tremendous impact. And we can get into that later.
Mm-hmm.
And it's helped so many people. I mean, I can't even begin to explain the thousands of people that it's helped. But yeah, the emotion that I remember was just sadness. My dad was like the glue in the family. He was the one that brought all the energy to the parties, and he was the one that was making everybody laugh always.
Mm.
He was the one that would have the hard conversations at work. He was the one dealing with the union, because it was a union environment.
A union in New Jersey? A union environment? Was he in the mafia?
Yeah. There were mafia ties in my family, not on my father's side, believe it or not, on my mother's side. But he was the one that the family turned to usually when there was a difficult situation. Of course, my grandfather as well. But my father brought that, the young energy to the group, which is interesting because looking back now on my life, I'm like the complete opposite. I'm very introverted, very private, although I like making people laugh. I don't think I have the knack that he did. I mean, there's so many pictures, and I still have so many all over the house, but it was just him just being like goofy and funny and just trying to get everybody just to feel joy and to just laugh. He did that even through his illness, even through his treatment. That's the other piece that I remember, though, was like through all of the sadness was this incredible strength that he held, and how he still managed to to uplift people in those difficult moments.
Yeah. Ariana was the exact same way. She laughed and made jokes and allowed it to be a joyous thing in such a tragedy.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you now realize that you aren't like him. Did you know that growing up, like, or at least in the way that he was like boisterous and comical and all that stuff? Did you know that growing up, and how did that impact your relationship to him? Because I would assume there's a level of wanting to feel connected to this man that you didn't get to grow up with.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that piece of it came from other people. It's not like I looked back and said, "Oh, I'm so different from him," because when I was younger, in middle school, high school, I definitely was a bit of a prankster and enjoyed all of that as well. But people did come to me and say, my cousin, who I love dearly, he is a lot more like my father was. He's always the life of the party. He's always bringing that energy, making people laugh. I mean, I could listen to him for hours and literally just cry in tears because that's how funny he is. So people would say things like, "Were you switched at birth with your cousin?" Meanwhile, I look exactly like my father and he looks more like his father, right? And his father would say things like, "Actually, I wish that was the case because I would love to have Carl as a son."
That's awesome.
If he listens to this, he'll probably kill me.
That's awesome.
He knows we've all joked about it. But I think in many ways I am a lot like him. And I didn't realize that at first because I was being given messages like that, right? Especially as a kid, people don't see this more serious side of you until you're older, I guess. But I definitely have his drive, his determination, his ability to have those difficult conversations. I see a lot of him in me. And there's even things like habits. And this is not a habit that I'm proud of. I've actually recently stopped this, but for a very long time, I used to bite my nails. And my father did that. It was actually a really bad habit that he had. And my uncle still now struggles with it. And I struggled with it for a very long time. But just that one thing, right? That I was not even 2 years old. I suppose I witnessed it, but I carried that habit my whole life almost until just recently. So it's interesting what you learn from your parents, even if you're only with them for such a short time. A lot of the personality traits, I'd say I'm aligned, and then there's some that I'm not. But I would hear also things from people like people that I worked with that knew my dad and worked with my dad before he passed. Amazing stories that come forward. One of the things that I just loved about working in a family business was I met so many people that knew my father very intimately and worked with him for years before he passed. And the stories were just amazing.
That's such a gift that you have.
Oh yeah.
When you were growing up and hearing these stories, right? Like it sounds like it feels like he was very much a presence in your life, though not physically. What kind of thoughts and emotions and feelings would you have when you're moving through the world? You have significant events, you're graduating from high school, if you played sport, you play hockey, right? So when you're doing these things and you run into these milestones in your life growing up and you see your friends with their family and their dad and their mom, what kind of reaction did you have to that?
I think I never felt like I was the victim in this. I felt like there was so much learned about just how to cherish life. And there was so much that he sacrificed and gave for me in his life, but also in his death. So I never felt like I was the victim, but
he sacrificed in his death for you? What do you mean?
I think that he made it very clear to me in his death how much we should cherish our lives and every moment that we have.
Yeah.
especially having died so young.
Hmm. How did that play out for you as a kid, and how does it play out for you now as an adult?
I think in many ways, honestly, the question about the significant milestones, of course, I wished he was there
Yeah.
always, at those graduations or at my wedding or whatever it was, to be here to see my son. I have a 3-year-old son now. But I also feel like he is with me every day. I feel his presence actually very strongly, energetically. I firmly believe in the soul's journey, and I've met with a couple mediums over the years, which I also firmly believe in.
Yeah.
And I've been able to.
I've been so tempted to do that. I didn't want to interrupt.
It's amazing. No, it's amazing. I recommend it all the time, and I've actually tried to get CJ to go see a
Yeah.
medium, but I got to keep working on that because he's not ready, and that's fine.
No,
I'm
I think, I was going to say, I feel like I don't actually think I'm ready, but I do have, I'm like, I find it interesting. But I don't know that I would be ready to hear what they have to say, honestly.
Yeah. There's been like certain milestones though on that journey as well, like going to see mediums. I've seen them countless times, and I always go with one particular thing in mind, right? I want to connect with my father. And I'll never forget this one time I went. This woman was incredible. It was I think my 29th, like right after my 29th birthday. And one of the things that she said was, "Oh, your father's here. And he's saying that you're now older than he was when he passed." And I was just blown away by that, right? Like it was just such a confirming moment for me that he was there.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear those messages though, of just, I love you, I see you, I'm with you, you can always come to me, were so healing.
Was there any fear or trepidation going? Like,
Absolutely.
What if he says like, "Oh, I'm disappointed in you," or
Yeah,
"It's horrible here, don't die"? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, I have a lot of fear around it, but how did you handle that then? What made you say, "I don't care about what's going to happen. I just want to go"?
I guess it was just this feeling of, I don't know what it is, but I have a sense that I am in tune energetically with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I felt the safety in that.
I see.
That makes sense.
I have experiences where I used to drive by for work. I used to drive by the cemetery every single day. And I pass it on the highway and I look over, and his headstone is black. It's like this black marble that was picked out, and it's one of the only ones in the entire cemetery. It's a massive cemetery. So from the highway at 65 miles an hour, I can see it.
That's awesome.
Underneath one of these trees that's in the cemetery, I know right where he is. In that moment, though, every time I thought of him, not just seeing it, so I could pass and not think of him, maybe just, there it is, acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But if I wanted to tap into him, I had this ability to do that. And I would feel this kind of rush of energy starting at the top of my head and going all the way down to my feet.
No way.
Kind of like when you get like shivers almost, like a shiver down your spine type of thing. I would feel that. And I feel that often when I think about him. And I don't need to speak to him like I'm speaking to you now. I can speak to him just in thought.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm able to connect with him in that way. And the only sometimes it's difficult to interpret, of course, what's coming back because you're just feeling it. But when I feel that, I know that he's with me. And that's all that really matters, right? That he's with me. And in those experiences and going to see those mediums, just to hear, I am with you. You are in tune. I've heard that. You can feel me when I'm with you. I'm proud of you. I'm so proud of you. And, that to me kind of always kept me going.
Yeah. When did you first realize that you had that kind of connection with him? Were you younger?
I think it's always been there, but I never knew what to make of it.
Uh,
And then in the past, maybe 5-7 years or so, I realized like, oh, that's what it is. And oh, it's not just me wanting this. Like, no, I'm physically feeling it. It's happening. And then the confirmation of meeting with the medium and having her say that. And I've seen a number of different mediums, and the messages are so consistent that it's so reaffirming.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I'll just share this and this is for everybody who listens. This is one thing that he said to me through this medium. And I lit a candle because of this. And I always light candles when I'm looking to speak to him. He actually said, the flame draws me in.
No way.
So when you want to speak and connect with me, all you have to do is light a candle. And I'm able to be there right there with you. And it happens, right? I light the candle. I feel it in my body. Like he's here with me.
Fuck.
And I usually start with that. And then I also like tarot. I was never into tarot. My wife got me into tarot. She's like, here's a deck. Just try it. I'm like, okay. And, I thought, well, it's just the luck of the draw, right?
Yeah.
But I can go into a session with tarot cards and it's just me. It could be late at night by myself. I'll grab my deck, I'll shuffle, and I'll ask him for guidance. I'll ask for his support. And it's very specific. I usually pull 3 cards and it's past, present, future guidance. So past, what's happened, present, what's happening in the future, and then just guidance towards that, right? Or even it could be current, future guidance. Depends on what you're looking for. I usually go more so with current, I suppose, at this point. But I'll pull cards. They are so on point for exactly, for what I need in that moment, whether it be reassurance in the things that I'm putting myself out for, whether that be through work, my family, anything really. If I need someone to say, hey, you're okay, you've got this. He comes through in those cards, and it's just an incredible thing. It really is.
Did you ever feel anything like that, Ashley? With that Nancy?
I feel like I see more signs, which brings me to that point. Like when I first moved to Atlanta after college, I moved into an apartment complex that I found with a friend. And the creek behind the apartment complex was called Nancy Creek. Her name's Nancy. And like driving home one night, I kind of took a route that I think I actually missed a turn on accident, but that missed turn brought me down like Nancy Creek Drive, which they were actually 2 different sides of town. So I don't know the symbolism between that. But she has also sent signs through my little cousin. My little cousin will be like, no, Aunt Nancy was there.
On her side?
Yeah, my uncle's, her brother's daughter. So she'll there's 2 stories, and I honestly I'll probably either combine them or butcher them. But there were 2 occasions where she was like, no, Aunt Nancy was there. She loved it, and you're like, wait, what? She's never met her because she was born.
Damn.
I think she's No, she's not 13. She's 10 now. So, years and years had passed since, 10 years had passed since she was here. And that, I think for my family is like the strangest, but most amazing thing. Right. And then there was another story. Same thing. My cousin, my aunt took her to Michael's and like the craft store, and my mom used to take us there all the time. And, I think they were doing a craft, but again, it was the same, just kind of in their conversation. She's like, yeah, Aunt Nancy said she's going to be there. So it was just like 2 you're just like, she's not making this up. There's no way that this child is making that up. And she was, I think it happened around I want to say 6 and 8 maybe, or 5 and 8, something like that. But yeah, they were 2 very real stories that felt just like, you're like, that's crazy. And then not that long ago, in the last 2 years since I moved back from London, I had the most vivid dream of my life. And she looked, there's a picture of my parents in Disney World, and she literally was in that outfit, with that hairstyle. And obviously like her last years on earth, she had no hair. So it was kind of this thing where like, you know, she said something about my nail polish and said, I'm very proud of you. And, but being in that outfit just like was like something like, you know, she's doing okay. I felt like that was like the message, right? Like, cause that was like a good time, a family vacation, like full head of hair, and she didn't look sick. So those were like, I don't think that it's all the time. I selfishly wish it was more, but definitely have been like symbols. And then, you know, like everyone says cardinals are, you know, angels saying hello. And I have seen, again, like I don't see them all the time, but when I do see them, I'm like, I think that is, I think that's definitely her saying hello. So I feel like I don't feel her presence around me as much, although I feel like maybe it's like you said, Carl, like you don't actually realize it until you're like, oh, but the signs have always been something like so prevalent for me.
Yeah.
Which,
damn, for me, it's always just negative.
no, I think that's Ariana because she was always the positive one, so she's got to play some jokes.
Yeah, it's just like I always just feel like if I have really vivid dreams, which I'm a vivid dreamer anyways, and if she ends up showing up, which is few and far between, it's always like this horrible, like I wake up just feeling awful. And like I always just have this sense of like if I was ever able to actually communicate with her, I don't know if I could or if I believe that, but if I could, or if she has communicated to me through dreams or through these other signs, because there's been a lot of weird shit that's happened that's kind of undeniable. I just feel it'd be like, you're fucking up, CJ.
No.
You're fucking the kids up. You're fucking your life up. Get the fuck over it and get moving.
She might tell you to get the fuck over it. That I believe. She definitely would tell you that.
She always would tell me.
Yeah, is that the kind of tough love that that she would give? Yeah.
Yeah, I wish you met her, man. I really
tell him the banner at the funeral. Come on.
Oh yeah, did I ever tell you about that?
No.
So she was it was once it like spread, right, 2020, and she knew, like we knew, like it was coming close to the end. So she made one final post on Facebook, and she didn't post very often. And it was just this huge long thing of like, this is what's happening. You know, we're struggling, but we're getting through it. And I love you all. And here are the things that I'm really grateful for, you know. And it was funny things like getting to be high all the time, and, you know, with the medicine, just like really dumb shit. And her very last words on her very last post for Facebook was, we're hoping to make it through. We're hoping to get me through the holidays and get out of, you know, this shitty 2020.
She said, don't let me die in this butt fuck of a year.
Yeah. Don't let me die in this butt fuck of a year. Toodaloo, motherfuckers. So, and I'll send you a photo after.
That's amazing.
So I had a huge banner. Actually, Ashley's brother got it for me. It was I had a huge banner made, huge, and it just said "Toodaloo, motherfuckers." So as soon as you walked in for the funeral or for after the party, it was just "Toodaloo, motherfuckers."
It was great.
Yeah, she was nuts.
Beautiful. Yeah.
But I think that's really incredible that you get to access him like that.
Yeah.
As you were like going through childhood, right? So you probably didn't really notice that stuff that often, but you said you got to hear stories from him, about him. And I know you had like a stepdad too. What was it like to have another father figure in your life? And you don't have to go into detail like about him, like to respect them. That's totally up to you. But I'm just wondering, like, from your perspective, regardless if he was amazing or bad, whatever that is, just being like, okay, I have this real like biological being that is gone physically, and I have this thing in place. What was that like? What kind of struggles did you have with that?
Yeah, it was tough because I was young when my mom remarried, and I can't recall exactly what age. But I remember, meeting him, spending time with him, and he was just so full of joy. And he made my mom extremely happy. And to me as a kid, that's all that really mattered, right? I had witnessed her be so sad and so alone for so long that when she found my stepdad, I was really excited about that. But yeah, it was hard. Who is this man to me? Yeah. What do I call him? And that evolved over time. Once they got married, things started changing pretty rapidly for me. And I'll never forget this day. And I don't know exactly when it was. I was young, but I was brought into the kitchen, and my stepdad and my mom were there. And basically, I don't know exactly what was said, but what I remember is being told, from this point forward, you will call him Dad.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was, I think, so stunning at the time that I just said, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, looking back, yeah, I think that could have been handled a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it sort of felt like Dad's being replaced.
Yeah.
And I know that's not how my mom ever felt. In fact, she's the first person to say all the time that my dad was her first and true love, and she's always going to love him for her entire life. She will always miss him. She tells me that he's always a part of her and will always be, every moment of every day. But it didn't feel like that during that conversation.
Yeah.
I think, though, also, looking back, setting that aside, that I was truly blessed because I now had a father figure where I didn't before.
Mm-hmm.
And I give him so much credit because now, as a father myself, I don't know what it would be like to be in a relationship with a woman that has a son, to then get married, and then to try to be the father figure for that boy who lost his father at a young age.
Yeah.
I mean, what a tremendous amount of strength that must take. And he did. He took me on like his very own son. He treated me like his son from very early on in the relationship. And he was my number one cheerleader. He was at all of my sports games. One of the things he always said that I'll never forget, and I still recite today, is, "Come on, Carl, you can do it. If you put your mind to it, do it. Carl, do it." And he would always sing it like that. He'd be behind. I'd played hockey even at a young age. I played goalie at the time, and he'd be banging on the glass. Shut out, shut out. I have all these amazing memories of him being there with me and being my cheerleader and just loving me in every way that he knew how.
Mm-hmm.
So I honor him for that. And only recently, actually last year, we met for dinner. And I put that all out there and thanked him for that. I didn't truly understand it or appreciate it until I was a father myself.
Yeah.
What does it take to be a father? You don't know until you are one.
Right.
Especially, I can't imagine that situation, right? So we had this amazing conversation. And now things are a little bit different. My mom and my stepdad got divorced. He's since moved, not a very far distance, but a distance. So I don't see him as much as I would like. Yeah. And even that process was really difficult for me because I felt like I was losing my father again the second time.
Right.
I can't even imagine that. That's difficult.
Yeah. But I had other father figures too. I had my grandfather, who I think at that young age,
Your dad's dad?
Yeah, my maternal grandfather, my dad's dad. At that young age, usually I think it's between 2 and 5. I mean, so much development happens in the child's brain, right? He was my father figure during that time. And I just have the most incredible memories of him and the time we spent together. And although I wish it was longer, he died when I was in high school. I'm just so grateful for the time that I had with him, because if I was to say today what it would be like to have my biological father with me, I would think it would have been like the relationship I had with my grandfather.
Oh, wow.
We were that close. We spent so much time together. My mom was a single mom working as a nurse. She worked in the ER for a period of time. She worked in maternity for a period of time. So I would get dropped off at my grandparents' house.
Yeah.
I'd go to work with him. We would do everything together, everything. He had this amazing property and a golf cart. We'd drive around in the backyard for hours on end. We'd ride his tractor and, plow the snow and all the fun stuff that I would say is part of a normal father-son relationship. That getting outside, that hands in the dirt, that exploring, that taking risks, all of that. He brought that and gave that to me. So I cherish that every single day.
That's awesome. So you had the presence of your dad.
Mm-hmm.
You had stories about your dad.
Mm-hmm.
You had other father figures around you. What did you feel, or did you feel there was anything that you lacked by not having your dad, by losing him at such a young age?
Yeah, I think even with those father figures in my life, I love my stepfather dearly, but it's different.
Yeah.
It's not the same kind of relationship you have. And I know that now because of my son. This feeling that I get when I see him. Did my stepfather have that for me? I don't know. But there always felt like something was missing. Like there was some sort of barrier that was put in place. And I don't know if that was on my side or his, doesn't really matter. There was a barrier, right? And yeah, I do look at people I know, friends that I have that have great relationships with their fathers, and say, yeah, I feel like I did miss out on something there.
How does that affect you now with your son? Now having a son, he's younger, right?
Yeah.
2-3 years old. How does this impact you now as a father?
It only became apparent to me recently, and this was a shared experience that you and I had, CJ, when we were in Texas at the retreat. There was a poignant question that was asked early on. I think it was the first day we were there. I was sharing my story about my father, and Dewey, one of the facilitators, basically said, let me ask you this question. Do you know what it's like to be a father? Like, do you know what embodying that fully means? And I sat there in silence because I thought I did. But when he asked it, I said to myself, actually, no.
Yeah.
I don't.
I remember that. Yeah.
And that was kind of earth shattering, because here I am, a father, and now realizing I have no idea what it takes to be a father, because I didn't have one in my life. Yeah. As much as those figures were there and they loved and supported me, there's something missing in those relationships, right? And that was being kind of put in my face now for the first time. And I think there's other ways, honestly, that it's impacted my relationship with my son. I mean, there's this fear inside me that I look at what my mom went through, and I didn't quite understand that again until later. And I can talk about that in a minute, but seeing the pain that was caused by my father's departure and knowing what I've been through in my life, I would never want that for my son.
Yeah.
And I have a fear. I have a fear that that's going to happen. That for some reason, something's going to happen to me and I'm going to leave my son and my wife.
I have that. I've got that fear.
Me too. every day I'm like, oh, I'm going to die young. It's going to happen for sure.
I don't think I have the sense that I'm going to die young, but I used to have a big aversion to having kids because I was like, I'm going to die and leave them. Or what if I die and leave them? And now I have a boyfriend that wants kids, and I'm like, I guess maybe. But you can't die.
It's the best thing I've ever done, to be honest with you.
But to your point of like, do you know what it's like to be a dad or a mom? I have like the same thing. Like I had a great stepmom. She's a great mom. Don't get me wrong. But it is different. It is like this just, and my friends will joke. I'm pretty sure they say I'm not maternal, and I'm very frank. And I'm like, well, shit, maybe I'm not supposed to be a mom. Like, maybe I'm supposed to just have my dogs because I love them. They're like my favorite people on earth. So they get everything they want. I'm very maternal to the dogs.
This fear, though, was so prevalent in my life that when I went to one of those sessions with the medium, he came forward and he said, you do not have to worry. You are past the age where this could have happened to you.
Yeah.
And so these sessions, not everything that comes out of them is always great. He said, if I had gotten sick today because there's been such advances in the field, he said I would have lived. And that was really fucking hard to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. You say the same thing about my mom.
Yeah.
Or she at least would have had longer, I think.
You would think. Ariana got treated the exact same way with the exact same medicine.
And that's like the scary thing where you're like, yes, but no. What did he have again, Carl? Sorry. I don't know if I missed that.
Leukemia? Yeah.
My stepmom's husband passed from leukemia. My dad met my stepmom in a support group. But he was sick and I believe passed relatively soon after he was diagnosed as well.
Yeah, and that came out of nowhere for them too.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, they weren't even planning on it. They went to the hospital for treatment and she left without him.
Yeah.
Yeah, It's crazy. Like they just were not planning on him dying so soon. Fucking cancer, dude. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Shit.
Yeah.
It is. So you mentioned your mom and about what it was like to watch her go through that and kind of your thinking around that and then seeing and observing it now. You wanted to touch on that a little bit. So could you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of this actually has to do with you, CJ. So
yeah, I was afraid of that.
Yeah. But yeah, I went through my life not really considering what it was like for my mom. I was only considering what it was like for me. Now, my mom has experienced a lot of loss in her life. And she's on her own journey of healing and personal growth right now. We're both kind of simultaneously on our own. But I had never really considered it, right? And we went on that retreat.
Yeah.
That weekend in Austin, Texas.
That
I'll never forget.
Retreat.
Where we met.
Yeah.
And, some of the most amazing relationships have come out of that. So for anybody listening, I highly recommend that type of experience if you're considering it.
How did you find that, by the way?
That was through a men's group called The Alliance. But primarily, I guess I was directed to that through a podcast called Man Talks. Okay. So Connor Beaton is the person who started The Alliance. He has a podcast.
Interesting.
And that's kind of how I found it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly went there not really knowing what I wanted to talk about or what I was looking to achieve. In fact, I don't think I even went there planning to talk about my father. It was more about like current issues, things that I've been dealing with that I thought, okay, yeah, that's the past. And now I need to focus on what's in front of me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But everything's connected.
Yeah.
And that was revealed through this experience, right? Like everything
Yeah.
I'm going through now, it connects back to that loss. So that's what I ended up sharing. And the entire time we were there was another man there who was extremely quiet. He was kind of slumped over in the seat,
Mm-hmm.
and I could tell he was angry
So
and
angry.
extremely, extremely sad, but
Yeah.
mostly angry.
Yep.
And we went through the first couple days, and this man didn't say much. But then there was a time, an opportunity that came forward where he started to share his story. And his story was of the passing of his wife and how he felt like he was a broken man. And when he shared that story with me, it struck me. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I'm peering into my mom's experience. This is the pain, this is the suffering that she endured that I never acknowledged, never discussed with her. How could I? I mean, I was a kid, but even now as an adult, I've never acknowledged it. So that man was CJ.
Making me cry, man.
We all were. And
Yeah.
just thinking about it, yeah, I certainly could again. But I remember we had a break and I walked outside, and Dewey Freeman, Dewey was the facilitator I mentioned before. For anybody who's interested, Dewey is incredible. Definitely check him out online. Dewey Freeman is his name. I grabbed him and I said, Dewey, can we talk for a second? I said, I'm just really shook by what I just heard. Like I was actually visibly shaking. And I shared, how that felt to me. And he's just point blank asked me, have you ever asked her what it was like to lose your father?
Mm.
I was like, wow, no, nope, never have. But that was the beginning for me of a long healing process when it comes to my mom's relationship, her and I, which has been fractured at times for a number of different reasons. But that, to me, kind of opened my mind to, I need to come to the line. I need to ask her. I need to have that discussion with her because we can share in that together.
Yeah.
My experience, her experience. We were, when we were together, when it was just us, we were like the dynamic duo. Like
Yeah.
we did everything together, and we just have so many pictures of us just having so much fun, and just the love that I can see in those pictures. And she says to this day, every day, she tells me, I saved her. I saved her
Mm-hmm.
after my father's death because it gave her something to live for.
Yeah.
And to not have ever explored with her this loss, it just struck me, and I needed to fix that. And I went home. I actually spent time while we were there. I wrote down some thoughts about how I wanted to talk to her about it, and just kind of journaled on it, and then reached out to her. And it's kind of a fluke thing. She stopped by to drop something off for my son, and we ended up just launching into it. Nobody else was home. And that kicked off an amazing conversation. But more so than that, it kicked off and I guess accelerated the healing that needed to happen in our relationship.
Yeah. And you used a phrase too that I thought it was interesting, is you said you knew, like, after watching me go in the fucking center of the circle and go through that shit twice, that you needed to go to the line. And I thought that was an interesting choice of words, right? It's, I don't know everything, and we don't need to discuss everything that was fractured between you and your mom at different points in your life. But you were still allowing yourself to say, I want to explore this and I want to understand, but like, I'm going to go to the line, and she also needs to come meet me. Right. So you didn't force anything, and you didn't go against your boundaries or potentially anything that could have hurt you in that moment. And I think that was really interesting that you phrased it in that way and approached it in that way too.
Yeah, it's extremely well said. And I think it's something to consider in all difficult relationships, right?
Yeah.
Maintaining those boundaries where they need to be. And it doesn't matter who it is, your mother, your father, or anybody.
Yeah.
But being willing to have those hard conversations, to ask those tough questions is just so important to that relationship really deepening. And that's what I needed to do with her because I felt like we were stuck.
Yeah. Where is it now? Do you still feel stuck, or are the lines of communication open now?
I think, ever since that weekend, it's been quite a journey for me and my own healing and really processing this loss of my father, because to be honest with you, I don't think I ever really did.
Yeah.
I never really faced it. I kind of just said, okay, that's a part of who I am, and just move on. Right. Like, attaboy, let's go,
Yeah.
Never really faced it and felt it and grieved his loss. And I've been doing that a lot over the past year. And she's been a part of that, because I know now, especially, that she just got divorced from my stepfather and now she's alone. She's grieving that, but she's still grieving the loss of my father.
Yeah.
And
it never goes away.
It never goes away. And she brings it up to, quite often. I miss your father. He was my one and first, true love.
Yep.
Yeah. So we've been on this journey together. Hers, she's on her track and I'm on mine. I think that's really important. But because of that growth, we've both been able to come to the line, have those difficult discussions, and just be honest with each other. And we talk about my childhood. We talk about her childhood and what she went through and the depth of the loss that she's experienced. And through all of that, our relationship's, I would say, in the best place it's ever been. And that doesn't mean we're perfect. We've got a lot of work to do, a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But it's in the best place it's been really for as long as I can remember.
That's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Because not only is family relationships difficult, you layer that on top of this extreme grief that you both have had in different ways. And speaking from somebody who relates more to your mom, I was actually just talking to the kids about this tonight. I don't know what their experience is like. And I can only take them so far with it. Where, like, Ashley and my cousins, like, they came around them when Ariana died, and they're there for them. And it's just like it's this weird thing where it's like like you said, you guys were the dynamic duo, and I had to laugh because that's how I felt with my kids. Like, the second Ariana died, I was like, okay, fuck, it's me and the kids. We're a team, and we're going to do this shit together. So it's like we had this mutual grief and pain and anger, but at the same time, it's so different in so many ways. So it's really hard for us to understand each other. So the only thing we can do is communicate it. Now, I had just one more thing that I wanted to ask. I know we're getting close on time, and I want to respect that. And I don't even know if you've thought about this, or if there's even an answer to this, or if you even want to. But we've talked a little bit about basically like what it was like growing up. We talked about how it affected your relationship with your son, your mom, your stepdad. How has the loss of your dad and going through these experiences affected you and your relationship with girlfriends and now being married?
That's honestly one I haven't considered as much. But I think in a lot of ways, a profound impact. I mentioned before how I feel about my son, and that's the same with my wife. What would it be like if I was to get sick and I was no longer here and I couldn't be there for her? It makes me extremely sad to even think of that.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, like, knowing a little bit, like getting a glimpse into what it might have been like for your mom, does that add an element to it with your wife of like, fuck, I don't want her to have to experience what my mom did. So it's like you're seeing this from two angles now. Like, I don't want my son to experience what I experienced. I don't want my wife to experience what my mom experienced.
Yeah. we've talked about all of this stuff. The amazing thing is my wife and I, we've been together since we were in high school.
Yeah.
I was 17, she was 16.
I love that.
And she knew my grandfather,
Oh,
and
Oh,
that,
that's awesome.
yeah, that is awesome.
yeah, that connection, it was honestly so important because she got to see, like, she got the real vision of what it was like to be
Yeah.
in the family when he was a part of it, because he sort of kind of became, well, he always was, but he, I think, had to embody this even more, the glue of the family. And he had to stay strong for the family after my father passed. But she was able to get to know him. And I think that gave her more insight into who my father was and allowed us to have the conversations and for me to be vulnerable with her, going back all of those years. For a long time, I never talked about him. I didn't think I could. I didn't value vulnerability. I valued what I think most men in this world hear right now, which is suck it up.
Yeah.
Suck it up, move on. It's, emotion is weakness. Vulnerability is weakness. Those are the messages that I think we get as young men in today's society. And it wasn't until recently that I realized, no, the strength is in the vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily with my wife, because I was so close to her and because we grew up together, if you think about it that way,
Yeah.
the vulnerability was always there. So she was the person that I was always able to share with. But, I didn't quite understand the depth of how that loss impacted me until much later in my life. So we have better and deeper conversations about it now than we probably ever had.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I was with Ariana since high school too. So
Yeah.
I understand that sense of literally growing up with somebody.
Yeah.
We went through our formative years together. Is there anything that you would want to say to somebody who is in a situation that you're in, losing a parent? Any words of wisdom or things that were helpful to you?
Yeah. And this is something I didn't realize until, again, much later in my life. But, I think for most of my life, I tried to always consider, what would my father want from me? I tried to always follow in his footsteps, right? I tried to always act in a way that I thought would make him proud.
Yeah.
I made decisions based on that, whether it be where I went to school, I went to the same college, or what I decided to do as a career. I ended up working for the family. I always thought to myself, well, that's what he would want for me. And to some degree, I think I tried to replace him. I tried to be my father for my mother in some ways. I tried to be her protector. But I realized I can't do that.
Yeah.
I wasn't being true to myself. And eventually realized this isn't what I want for my life. It took a moment of pause. But when I had that moment of pause and kind of really stepped back and considered it, I always know that he's proud of me. I always know that he's with me. There's a video he left me. There was a recording, a video, and a letter. In the video, he specifically said, no matter what you do, it doesn't matter what it is, I will always be proud of you as long as it's what you love. It's what you're passionate about. So I needed to step outside of his shadow.
Yeah.
I lived most of my life in it, trying to be a certain somebody, trying to replace him, trying to embody him for the comfort of others, like my mother. But I realized I needed to step outside of it. And that's been hard.
Yeah.
But it's also been some of the most fulfilling work that I've done.
Damn. That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you for sharing with us. Yeah, that's it. I mean, There's nothing else to
Nothing
say. That's awesome. And thanks for being here, Carl. We definitely appreciate that and sharing some of your story. I know like we only scratched the surface because the shit runs real deep.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're grateful for you being here and thanks.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to you, CJ, and Ashley too, for what you've embarked on here. I think this is extremely fucking important.
Thank you.
People need to talk
Mm-hmm.
about loss. They need to talk about grief. Everyone is afraid to be vulnerable, like I said before.
So true.
So this mission that you're on is so important. And I know you're going to be successful because you've been through it.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
And
that means a lot.
It's genuine. And I feel that.
Thank you. That means so much. Ah, fuck.
We're going to have some sort of ritual like after these things. Like, all right, what do we go do now? I can't go pour a glass of wine, I feel like.
Yeah, that's not a good ritual.
Not a good ritual to get into. No, that was amazing. Man. That was amazing, honestly.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Day After. You can find this podcast and more at our website at www.thedayafter.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate if you could take a moment to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts.